Hi guys, welcome to the video, welcome to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 and welcome to this review of it. So, probably about a week and a half ago now, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 emerged onto the market to great anticipation. It has to be said the first couple of days were not a great experience for many, for a number of reasons which I'm not going to go into. But one of the things that I tend to do, and this has become a habit when I'm reviewing stuff, whether it's aircraft or whatever it might be, is I tend to take a step back from that day one release. Virtually everything that is released, everything from an operating system to an add-on aircraft, tends to be a bit buggy or not quite where the developers want it to be. And that initial feedback from the first 2, 3, 4 days of a product being launched, in some respects, is twofold. First of all, it's great feedback for the developers. You know, these development teams sometimes are a small team and they have a very small group of testers. Other times it's bigger teams, etc. But fundamentally, they get a huge amount more feedback, or testing of a product, I should say, is a better way of describing it, than can be done by a small number of people. So obviously, from a developer's point of view, they get a lot of feedback very quickly. However, what that often leads to is a change a couple of days, week later, where there's been some updates, be it an update, a hot fix, whatever, however you wish to regard it. But fundamentally, that's one of the things I now look at, is doing reviews a week and a half after the release, because it doesn't matter whether it's an aircraft or it's Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Lots of things occur after the initial release, and the developers quite quickly tend to jump on those. Squashing bugs 2 years down the line, whole different matter. I'm looking at you, DCS. But fundamentally, for me, I think it's a more accurate review, or more accurately to do a review as opposed to, say, a first look or first impressions. For me to do a review, I think it's better to spend that time, a couple of days, a few days, maybe a week or two down the line, to see what we've actually got. So, obviously, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the sim, which has lovely, beautiful images of the opening scenes, etc. So, some of the guys watching this video will have not ever had a look at a sim before. Others will be veterans. I err towards the veteran side. I've been flight simming since fighter pilot on the Amstrad CPC back in 1983, 84, something like that. Microsoft Flight Simulator 3 onwards, and all sorts of stuff in between. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm particularly amazing at it. There are some people out there who are far better than I. But just to put some sort of context into where I'm coming at it from. What that means is myself and every other reviewer or person looking at something will always have some sort of biases, be they subconscious or otherwise. So obviously, from my perspective, this is my take on what I think of the sim, and obviously from that perspective, others may differ slightly. So I'm just going to deal with the elephant in the room to start with, which is the way that the sim works in terms of assets and managing assets. Every sim prior to this, pretty much, or bar a couple, there were a couple of sims that used to stream, little ones sort of on the side, etc. But pretty much every sim since the start of time has downloaded the assets to your computer, or run it directly off some sort of media like a hard drive, whatever it may be. But fundamentally that meant that your computer had these resources within its system. It wasn't streaming anything. It might be downloading continually, accessing information continually, but generally speaking you could play them offline. You cannot do that in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 because it streams, and because it streams, although if you download additional aircraft, for example, you can have them in the community folder like you can in 2020, because the core game streams, and because your scenery streams, and because your world streams, you haven't got the luxury of playing this thing offline. So that's the biggest thing that will potentially affect a lot of people. The second thing is the change in the structure of how the sim works. So compared to previously, where most of your assets were on your machine, and therefore you had as big a drive as you could get, as big a GPU as you could get, as big as a CPU as you could get, and basically the better the spec of your PC or your system, generally speaking, if you optimized it, the better the experience you would get. Now, some sims like X-Plane focused on using the GPU and maxing the GPU. Other sims like FSX, P3D were fundamentally focused on the CPU and one core most of the time, which is ludicrous by today's standards, where we've got 20-something core PCs. But fundamentally, it was always about hardware in those days. Now, that hardware is less important. I'm not going to say it's not important, it's just less important compared to the need for a decent internet connection. And this is where, certainly the first couple of days it came unstuck, but it's also where some of the elements of it have come out. Now, this is not a it's all beds of roses type situation with the sim. It's had some hiccups, it's got some good points, it's got some bad points, and we need to look at these with a critical eye and be open and honest about what we're looking at. And one of the things I do is, rather than just say things, if I see it, I will show it to you. That's the best way of saying things in terms of what's going on. So, as I say, the biggest change is this shift from the assets downloading onto your machine, your hard drive, your CD-ROM, whatever it might be, and running from that, as opposed to this, where all the assets are in the cloud and you basically stream from the cloud. I'm not a tech guru, as you could probably imagine, but that's my sort of top-down look at what's going on. There's advantages and disadvantages. I'm not an Xbox player, but an Xbox, I suspect, compared to a PC, has a much more constrained amount of stuff that you can do to enhance the machine. So a PC, you can have an infinite number of combinations of all sorts of things in terms of graphics cards, CPUs, you name it. But from an Xbox perspective, that's not necessarily the case. So with that in mind, streaming could potentially be quite beneficial for an Xbox user. However, if you have a poor internet connection, it's not so good. Which is where, if you have a poor internet connection, you might want to be staying with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 or even X-Plane, for example. So there we go. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have a look at the sim in terms of its user interface, its accessibility, some of the modes within it. We'll then take a couple of aircraft up, 2 or 3 aircraft up, see what we think in terms of flight dynamics, handling, the standards of the aircraft, and a few other bits and bobs. So that's what we're going to do, and then at the end we'll bring it together with a bit of a sort of conclusion as to what we think. So first thing I'm going to do is bring this over, because this is where you get your sim from. Okay, so you'll see here I've got SimBrief, because we are going to use SimBrief for one of the flights. So it's obviously Microsoft with the Xbox, and therefore Xbox Game Pass is your PC access way. If you're on an Xbox, obviously you can download it through the usual Xboxy things. I don't have an Xbox, but I'm sure it's not too difficult, and I suspect the price is probably the same. But if I just skip to this page, you'll see that there are 4 different flavours of the same thing. There's the basic standard, then you've got the deluxe edition, then you've got the premium deluxe, and then you've got the aviator edition. Quite why the first 3 aren't classified as aviators, I don't know, but this is obviously their sort of gold standard of, we're going to sell you everything. But what we'll do is we'll discuss a few things. The first thing is that the standard edition is available in 2 flavours. It's got the Xbox Game Pass edition, so if you go through Xbox Game Pass, you pay your monthly subscription, you can get it as part of any number of games that you have on it. I would suggest that if you already have the Xbox Game Pass, just stick with that personally. Yeah, there's a nice few other twinkly airports and aircraft, but fundamentally you're already paying for it, so you might as well just stick with that rather than pay for the £100 plus or the £130 plus. Now what I would say is they used to have in 2020 the edition to buy the upgrade. So in other words, if you bought it at the £100 and you actually wanted something within the £130, you could do that. And this becomes something for me that is not contentious, but potentially something that turns me against it, really. So your basic standard bog standard version is £70. You then get to the point of going, well, actually I want 5 extra aircraft or 10 extra aircraft and 5 extra scenery, whatever it might be. I did have a list of it somewhere. I'll try and pop it in the description. But what you do is you pay £30 for those 5 aircraft and 10 airports or whatever it is. And it's kind of the law of diminishing returns, because you go to this stage and you get another 5 or 10 aircraft and a few more airports and whatnot. And for me, this is where I came into something. One of the helicopters I really wanted was the H225, what used to be the Super Puma, as it used to be known. Because I worked out of an airbase where the Puma, the RF Puma, was in use, and I always thought it'd be kind of cool to fly one of those. Obviously they had the Super Puma in civilian world, and so this thing coming along, I thought, oh, I'd quite like to fly that in the flights. The problem is it's only available in this bundle. Now I would be paying a £30 premium for one aircraft. Now as I understand it, it's a really good aircraft. And it might be that if it's available separately, I'll buy it separately. If it gets to the point like 2020 where you can pay for an upgrade from one pack to the next, I might just do that. But the reality for me is that's £30 for one aircraft. Out of all of the 70, 90 or whatever I would have, that would be that premium for that one aircraft. So what I'd suggest is I'll link to the available aircraft in the description. Let me just see if this... Yeah, you see the deluxe here, it only adds, is it 10 aircraft? So the standard is all these, the deluxe adds these, the premium deluxe adds these, and then the aviator adds even more. But the only aircraft I was really interested in the premium deluxe was this one here. In fact the Saab as well maybe, but this one here, the helicopter. The reality is, in the standard version, unless you particularly want any particular one of these aircraft, the actual core standard version contains 70 aircraft, plenty of airfields. It's a really good buy for me. So I would just be aware, as I say, of the law of diminishing returns. This is 70 quid, this is an extra 30 quid, this is an extra 30 quid on top of that. So, and then if you have the aviator edition, it's just 200 quid and you basically get pretty much everything that you could want from the standard stuff. Basically this includes all the aircraft between 2021 and 2023 or 24 that went into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, but there we go. So that's basically your flavours, that's where you get them. There is one alternative, which I don't know if they're still doing it, but there's a limited collector's edition that Aerosoft were selling. I don't know if they still are, but it's the £200 thing. As a limited collector edition, you get a few extra bits, but they may well have sold out of that. So that's where you get the sim, that's how much it is, and that's my initial thoughts on buying it. Let's get rid of that. So without further ado, let's jump into the sim and have a look at a few of the bits. And as I say, we're going to have a look at the UI, we're going to have a look at things like how easy it is to set up keybinds and keyboard stuff and views, that sort of thing, because there's a lot more to it than 2020. 2020 was relatively straightforward in terms of key bindings compared to this, and I'll explain why. So as we go through this, slightly different loading screen to 2020, but very similar in ethos. So what you'll find is if I just go up here, FS, this takes you to the shop. There's lots of things trying to take you to the shop. It's not microtransactions, and it's obviously not a pay-to-win game, but obviously it's still a business. They still want to sell you stuff. So you'll find it in the liveries, you'll find it here, you'll find it all over the place. But that's if you wanted to go through the shop. Now at the moment, which is down here, the marketplace. At the moment, the marketplace, to the best of my knowledge, is not active. No, it's not. But I will mention that it does show you your library, and your library is stuff that is owned by you and bought through the marketplace. So obviously at the moment it's all through the market, it's all default stuff because the marketplace isn't active. But you can see it's got things like the challenges, the city updates. Now the city updates were in 2020, you had the default sim and then you had all these city updates, which took huge amounts of drive space up and slowed the loading of the system down, etc. But obviously, as you can see, they're all streamed here, which, you know, as I say, it could be good, it could be bad, depending on your system and all that kind of jazz. But predominantly your internet speed. And not just your speed, your reliability, because if it cuts out, you know, it might be roaring along, but if it has outages, then that's it, it just stops dead in its tracks. So yeah, some of these are greyed out. I owned these in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and I know that some of the aircraft from 2020 may be brought over into the marketplace, so I'm not quite sure. Oh, hello. This is stuff I've downloaded. As you can see, it's... Oh, right. It hadn't done this the other day. Oh, this has changed as well. Look at this. Rented and trial. So this is one I was querying, in myself. But let's work through it in a methodical fashion. So this is the marketplace as you get to it. This is now, we've gone into my library. We've got all streamed is Asobo stuff, Asobo Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is all streamed. Some of this I think I may have bought as payware, or it may be payware that's now within the sim, but it's not currently active. I don't quite know. They obviously don't give instructions with this sort of thing. But as you can see, this is all streamed. Rented and trial. It was rented previously, and I was querying that because I was like, rented doesn't sound that great. You know, if I'm paying money, what I don't want is to have an add-on that I end up paying and paying and paying and paying if I'm only flying it infrequently. You know, if I like it, I'll buy it. If I don't like it, I won't buy it. But one of the things that I thought about was very similar to DCS World. So if you're familiar with DCS World, you can trial something for 2 weeks. You can download the aircraft, you can play with it with 2 weeks, and if you don't like it, that's it, it's free. So this is interesting, the trial. Obviously we've got nothing there with trial items yet, but I like the idea of that, the fact that you don't end up in a situation where you buy an aircraft and you never fly it again because it's just junk. Now this is particularly important because those who've used 2020 will remember just how much absolute horrific nonsense there was in the marketplace. There was stuff that didn't even deserve to be on a computer, let alone sold for cash. It was ridiculous. So I'm hoping that that's something that we can maybe look at as a tool, as a user, something where we can filter out the absolute dog mess that was some of the add-ons available in 2020. And actually it's one of those things where I'm like, we need potentially to have the comments, the ability to leave comments. Yeah, maybe have them censored, or you know, checked that they're accurate and valid. But some of the aircraft and some of the add-ons were just horrific in 2020. So the prospect of being able to trial something is actually something that's quite appealing to me. Installed is anything that is not streamed that is on the sim, and you can see I've downloaded a load of liveries here. It may also have, let's go category aircraft. What else have we got? Yeah, so I've paid and installed the A300. And these are liveries, so it's not quite separated out liveries and aircraft, has it? Yeah, it's not quite sorted it yet. But yeah, this is something that's better. Now with the old Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, we had My Hangar, which we don't appear to have in this. If I come across it in a moment, that'll be great. But at the moment, I don't think we've got My Hangar or the equivalent. Microsoft Flight Simulator, nothing in there. Community. Oh, so this is enabling and disabling, like the packs. Oh, that's interesting. Enable, disable. Interesting. Scenery. I've also, obviously, I've got some of my payware scenery that has got 2020. This is payware scenery where it's got 2024 updates, or it's natively compatible with it. This is all by a company called Burning Blue Designs. It's UK general aviation scenery. It's really good, highly recommended. So yeah, this is interesting. This is interesting. This wasn't part of the setup before, and this was only yesterday. It was ridiculous. I was recording this yesterday, and I thought there was an update the day before yesterday, so I thought, oh, that's great. And then I tried to change between two aircraft, and the sim froze, and I was like, oh god, because the sim's been freezing on and off. So I came out of the sim, rebooted it, and went into an update, and it obviously was updating into this. So hence why I started at the beginning by pointing out the methodology that I use for some of these things now. Is there anything not installed? No. So I've installed everything I can install within the sim. But as I say, one of the things that I would like to see is the old My Hangar type thing back, so that you can just focus on your aircraft. We'll see if we find it as we go through the sim, but I don't think we will. So there we go, the marketplace and the library. Now, this brings us back to the main page. We've got a massive globe. It would have been nice if we could just spin it around, move it around, look at things, but no, it's just static. It finishes on the last position where you were loaded into in the sim during that session. It doesn't retain that, so when you come out and come back in a different day, it just comes back to this. But I think that they could have done a little bit more with this. It's pretty, but it's not amazing. Right. These sections down here, this is where I'm going to declare myself as slightly biased. As I say, I started simming decades ago, and I also went through the process of gaining my commercial pilot's license and my instrument rating, multi-engine, jet orientation stuff, and I lost my license medical just before I was looking at getting into the airlines, although I'd done all the training for it, which was a bit galling. But having said that, if you combine 40 years of flight simming plus actually doing real world, including on occasions I've flown about in helicopters, I've operated electronics in the back of Seeking aircraft, I've done a load of stuff that's kept me occupied over the years. There's some of the elements here that I have a slight bias towards, and I defy anyone to say that they don't have biases, so I'm going to declare them as I go. And the first one I'm going to declare is I just don't understand world photographer. I don't understand it at all. Whether it's a case of you fly around and you find the various things, you take a picture, I really don't know. But yeah, it's not something that strikes me. If I want to look at the Royal Gorge Bridge, I would probably want to see it in real life. Just a computer picture of it or a photograph of it doesn't really excite me. So I wonder if it's more about going to go and see the things. Should we? I know what. Should we click on one, see what we get? Select. What happens if we do that? Main objective: photograph the bridge from the cockpit of an X-Cub. Oh, okay. So there we go. That is just challenges basically. Let's see what it loads in. Yeah, so let's have a quick go on this. I'll be honest, I can't see it being something that I would want to necessarily do a great deal of, but I suppose it's a mode that allows you to fly a few interesting aircraft around some landmarks, but I can't see it being more than 5 or 10 minutes of interest really. Oh, hello. Right, ready to fly. Well, at least my controls are working. There we go. So that's obviously the bridge up ahead. We fly up, we take a picture. Job's a good one. How do we take a picture in this? I don't know. Right, found the throttle then. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be that exciting to me. It's literally put me at the start of where I need to be in a straight line, and all I'm going to do is take a photo. I haven't got the button set, so I don't know how to. So I suppose we'll just fly under it and be done with that, will we? Boom, there we go. Oh, hello, that's interesting. Back on track, you crashed. Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not overly excited by that. Back to main menu. So, yeah, it's basically similar to challenges and activities, really, isn't it? Talking of which, activities. The first one is flight training, and this is potentially beneficial if you've not flown much in flight sims before, going through the processes of learning all of this stuff. As I say, I'm fortunate that I've had the opportunity to sim for so long and also fly real world on and off for years. So this for me is something that I'm not overly excited about, but I can see the value in it. What I would suggest is that just be mindful that this doesn't replicate real life. There's nothing sharpens the mind quite like being bounced off the roof for Cessna 152 in turbulence. That certainly sharpens the mind a bit, and it reminds you that yes, you did tighten up your straps. So I take this with a pinch of salt. I think it's valuable for those who have never simmed or who are going through the basics. But certainly it's a tool that's there in terms of how to fly within the sim. I would also stress that things like instrument flight, etc., are not as real as they would be. The intensity of doing single engine, multi-engine instrument, multi-engine single pilot instrument stuff is insane in an analog cockpit. So I was better off than my colleague. My colleague did his multi-engine instrument rating in an aircraft that had, for each of the two engines, it had a throttle, a prop lever, a mixture, some cooling, and it had turbochargers, so you had to monitor the overboost. And that for two engines. It was just, I was lucky. I did mine in a DA42 with just one lever per engine. But that's what I'm saying, is that, you know, we get to a point where we accept that this is predominantly a game in terms of the training. I say predominantly a game. It is a game. The race rally and the things that they're basically just having some fun. So you've got a world leaderboard. I can't believe there's only 10 people on it. Maybe there's only 10 people finished it, but it's literally just a fun game. Nothing more than that, and you've just got to fly through the pylons. Are we going to get an aircraft? And here we go. Where's the next one? It's down here somewhere, isn't it? Oh, I missed that gate. It was too high. But there we go. So there's several of those. You can obviously get your times. Mysteriously, it's come up with more than 10 now. But very weird. But there's a number of these challenges that you can do. So let's go back to the main menu. They're fun, but they don't really hold my activity for that long. Was that activities or challenges? No, that's challenges, isn't it? Or was it activities? No, it was activities. Challenges are very similar to activities, as you will see. Race rally at Malaga. Low altitude going the Toyabe Canyon, Kruger Park, precision landing, all pretty much the same thing, but it obviously changes week by week, and then obviously it's running for week 4 out of 5, so yeah, pretty much the same sort of thing. I'm not gonna recover that, but basically it's activities and challenges. You also then have a career mode, which this is where for me it's a bit gamey, and I'll explain why when it eventually loads in. I say when it eventually loads in. Right, here we go.
You seemed comfortable out there.
He irritates the heck out of me. Go away, Scott. Not interested. So the career mode in there's been mixed sort of feedback on this online. Some people
Here you
seem
can
to
see
like it,
all the
others
different
don't.
certifications you can.
Yeah, that's
Your
great. But this again for me is very game focused. It's not. It's kind of got this sheen of, oh, this is how you do things, but it's not. It's wildly inaccurate. The reason being, for example, private pilot's license aeroplane. You don't need that in the real world to go and get your private pilot's license helicopter. It just doesn't make sense. Likewise, you don't need your private pilot's helicopter to go and fly a turbine engine in the real world. In the UK, certainly, you can actually do your training on a turbine engine helicopter. Coming over here, if you look at, well, let's click into here
all
for
the
the private
training
pilot.
lessons you'll need to pass.
You can see the various lessons. I mean, they're just as valid as going and doing the training, really. But again, for me, it kind of loses it. So I flew a number of GA aircraft when I was still doing PPL level stuff. 172 is ubiquitous in most sims, but you don't need a different license for any of these. So in effect, what I'm saying is that it's been gamified, that it's setting you a number of goals, a number of targets. So, you know, it's gamified. Likewise, at what point do you go, well, we're going to do a jet rating for the jet airline transport pilot rating, but we're not going to go through the multi-engine to get there? It just doesn't make any sense logically. You don't need a turboprop to do scoop rating. There are piston engined aircraft that do that have scoops for waterborne stuff. Tail wheel, you don't need a commercial license. You get my drift with this. It's basically a game mechanic that allows you to do certain things, or sets challenges for you along the way. I'll be brutally honest, for me it's not really something that's grabbed me, and you can probably tell by my opinions. But that's not to say it's not valid for many people. Before we go into free flight, we've done marketplace, so let's go into free flight and we can discuss more stuff within free flight. Okay, so this user interface, and I mentioned the user interfaces, I find them a bit garish in terms of their colour choice. They're perfectly functional. There's a couple of bits where it's a bit like, really? So if you're setting up a flight, you kind of go, it's like having streams. You kind of have one for this, and so on and so forth. It's not the most straightforward thing. A couple of things on here, so you can choose your aircraft, where you're going to. This will affect your flight plan, which you can get on your EFB, your electronic flight bag, down here. We'll cover that later rather than now. And flight conditions, i.e. weather and online, etc. And that's fundamentally it, really. It's pretty basic. So in terms of your aircraft, I will have some aircraft here that aren't in the default sim, because this is payware. The Cows DA42, an exceptional piece of payware. I did my instrument rating on a DA42, and this is a really good representation of that aircraft. Absolutely love it. But here's our Cessna. Now there's a few things here that I'm going to mention in terms of this as a user interface before we go into anything else. As a user interface, it's garbage. Opportunity to sell you some more stuff here. Tick. Other. I'm not really interested in these aircraft. Some will be. I think they're just a novelty factor for me. But that's just a personal thing, really. Flight FX. It's one of the things I will highlight. Actually, a lot of the add-ons are not necessarily in-house. Anybuilds is a great example of that. Anybuilds did an Airbus A300 and A310 on X-Plane. The A310 and A300 then got brought into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. The A310, I think it was free within the sim. Really good. The A300 was payware, and then subsequently for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, you can the 310's in it again, but you can also get the payware 300. but InnyBuilds have put a lot of stuff within the sim to their name, and it's very, very good. But where you see it with Microsoft/Asobo and then a company, that's an independent company that's working with the sim development team in terms of integrating products with it. What I will say is, for a sim on release to have so many available aircraft is quite exceptional. I've never known anything like it. Yes, so, but I'm really not quite sure what's going on here. These are, for me, just momentary flashes of, oh, should we have a go at that? Just not my cup of tea. Gliders. Gliders are awesome. Awesome in real life, awesome in simming. I genuinely haven't tried them, so I'm not going to comment on them. The gliding sims I've used previously have been solely for gliding. You can buy them, or you used to be able to buy them. Gliding flight simulators that are out there are really, really good. X-Plane is pretty good at glider stuff. I don't know what Microsoft Flight Simulator's like, if I'm being honest, but I have to be honest, it's not something that excites me, and I suspect it won't excite that many people within the sim community. Helicopters, I've got a payware Cowan sim in here. The purpose of it is that for me, there's work to be done in the flight sim element of helicopters within the simulator, and what I'll do is I'll demonstrate that. I'll take one of the default aircraft airborne, and I'll show you the handling differences between that and the Cowan sim. Cowan sim are payware, so I've paid this out of my own pocket, so it's not in the default sim. The other 5 aircraft are certainly in the package that I bought, the £100 one. But I do have question marks over the aerodynamic handling of aircraft within the sim at the moment. Airplane, this is my biggest bugbear. How many aircraft have we got here? And we've got to scroll all the way through them. There's no search bar. So I can't just type in, I don't know, Transal. I can't do that. Other bugbear, where's it gone? Textron Aviation Cessna 152. Everybody I can think of knows a Cessna as a Cessna 152. Might be a Reims, the French built one, but ultimately Cessna 152. Same with a Cessna Citation. There may be a more modern developer, but the other Cessnas, obviously being a C, are all the way down here. Cessna, Cessna, Cessna. It makes no sense to have so many aircraft under one category with no filtering whatsoever. Just ridiculous. So, as I say, I've got a few bits of payware in here, some of which are known to work and others which are in the process of me testing them. But as I say, if you see some of the InnyBuilds in it, they're pretty good at their Airbus stuff. The A400 is fantastic in this, really, really good. I understand the Beluga's quite good as well. But yeah, so, and this is where we come to differing standards of default aircraft. So we'll take the 737 airborne again later on and see what we think. But the 737 was the Boeing 737 was a bit of a nightmare to start with. It had all sorts of issues with trim and CFG and all sorts of issues that were causing a few headaches. So as I say, ignore the black square because that's payware that I've brought in. I don't know if it'll actually work. Some of this is payware, but what we're going to do for the first flight is we're going to have a look through the eyeballs of the Cessna 172 Skyhawk, the default aircraft in virtually all simulators. So, before we do that, in fact, no, we will do this first. So we've chosen our aircraft. Once we've chosen it, we can go to configure. If it has different liveries, we can do that here. So there's loads of different configurations. And this is one of the things I was saying, is that in the default aircraft, you get the G1000 with its various versions. If you go to the next tier up, the £100, you get the one without the G1000. So you're not really getting that much difference in terms of the aircraft, if that makes sense, but we'll just have a basic bog standard 172. Now, next thing, when you had my hangar, you could look around and rotate things. This is a really nice looking model, but I can't view it unless I'm in the sim to fly it, which for me is a bit of a it wouldn't take that much, surely. Basic statistics, basic information, not a lot of rocket science in here. You can choose your livery. I haven't really got that much in terms of variety for something like a 152 or a 172. You never would have in reality. I'm assuming that if you, for example, had your own personal 172, you could get somebody to do a painted livery of it, and you could import it through the community folder. Fuel and payload, you can adjust fuel and payload here, but I think it's a bit pointless because you have an electronic flight bag that is solely designed for being able to do this whilst you're sat on the ground in the aircraft. And then identification, if you want to give it a particular tail number or call sign, you can do so here. All very thrilling. So, having chosen our aircraft, we go back out of that arm. We then go into this arm. We're going to go from, where we're going to go from? We're going to go from Lowy, which is Innsbruck. It's a default for flight simulator people. People always do round where the house is, and Innsbruck and a few other places like Courchevel. But the first thing you'll notice is that we have seasons. So this is obviously winter because we are in winter, and you can see around Innsbruck it's all snowy and Christmassy, and oh, isn't it great? But this is where we start the sim. We can scroll in, we can find out where we are, and there's all sorts of different bits, and you can see stuff loading in as we are here. We're just going to, in fact, are we? No, what we'll do is we will park at the ramp and start from cold and dark so that we can have a look at a couple of bits, and then set as departure, flight conditions. Let's have a look at the flight conditions because I want to make it daytime. So what we can do is come down, instead of live we'll go to custom weather, which will keep the live settings for the day, but it'll allow us to change the time, and we're going to change it to about lunchtime or something like that. You can change your air traffic, whether you want live, AI or off, and then you can change your multiplayer, which could be live, all players, or off. I tend to fly with it off unless I'm doing something particularly multiplayer-ish. So there we go, and then we save and go back out of that arm, and then we come down here and we start the flight. So up on the right hand side you can see it hasn't got the frame rate at the moment. I don't know why, but I've got Afterburner running. Should be giving us a frame rate, but in the background I've also got Task Manager running, and the reason for that is that if I bring it up like this, you can see the usage of assets within the program. So here we go. Still getting some shimmering through here, but you can see where it loads in, you get massive chunks of data being used, CPUs being used quite intensively, the GPU likewise. So you can see the CPU and GPU utilization up here. Now the CPU on it is potentially misleading because the CPU usage in the sim depends on, where's our resource monitor there. So in terms of the sim, previously Microsoft Flight Simulator all the way through to FSX P3D generally only ran on one core, and you can see here that is clearly not the case with the modern sim. It's running virtually all cores at the minute, which is hugely beneficial. But in addition, we've got the overview here. No, we haven't got the graphics there, so we just have to go with the graphics here. But you can see the GPU utilization is really high at 96%. So basically it's using as much as it physically can out of all the resources available to it, which is great to see. And it's multi-core, and it's doing everything. And my frames per second for this has generally been about 120, 130. So herein lies one of the benefits, that basically my system is not having to do as much work as it used to have to do, and we will mention that by going to need to click ready to fly. Whee, steady on. If I go here into the menus, and we'll just discuss menus before we get airborne. very similar to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, so it will appear familiar if slightly gaudy, but same sort of thing, graphics settings. And as I say, one of the things I've been able to do, because most of the stuff is being downloaded as opposed to running through on my system, streamed I should say, that means that yes, I do have a good system, but I was never running everything at Ultra in my old system, whereas pretty much most of it's here in Ultra. I could probably increase the level of terrain detail, but the issue isn't necessarily that. The issue is it loading in is more of a concern. But yeah, so graphics, language, you can obviously change languages. Sound is sound. Online, you can change a lot of this. For me, the only thing I've really done is increase the rolling cache limit, but I've left most of the rest of it as it is. Camera, you can change some of the elements of the camera here if you wish. Flight model, go modern, go realistic. End of. That's the discussion had really. It's always been a problem with Microsoft Flight Simulator, or sorry, FSX, and also P3D. And a friend of mine did various aircraft development on for a company that did Microsoft Flight Simulator, FSX stuff, and P3D stuff. And one of the issues was always the tools for doing the flight handling and the unrealistic turbulence. The turbulence in that sim was completely wildly over the top. And in fact, I think it's slightly over the top here. I don't think they've necessarily changed it fully from how it used to be. It's improved. I'll be honest, it is improved. But I think sometimes the thermal, not the thermals, the turbulence is just a little bit too excitable. And what I mean by that is at fairly low levels of turbulence, it shouldn't be as aggressive as it is. At high levels, yeah, that's fine. I think most people who've been flying around have had some quite scary moments in turbulence in real world at some point or another. It's not a pleasant thing, but light turbulence, light chop is not something that the sim seems to do very well. It seems to go from nothing to really giving you a bit of a hard time workout on it. But there we go. That's just a personal opinion. But whatever you do, go for the modern flight model and the realistic preset for everything. There's no point doing anything else, in my opinion, because if you want to learn about flight and flight simming and that kind of thing, there's no point going up through the little sort of tiny steps. Flight interface, I've got a lot of this turned off because I just find it gets in the way. City markers, for example, very gamified for me. You know, I've done videos previously where I've been practicing real-world VFR navigation using Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. So good and so accurate were its VFR visuals that you could do that. So I don't really want airport markers on, etc. But you can put all these things on should you wish. HUD in the external view, for me, yeah, that's off. But it huge amount of variety for what you want to adapt and to have things. So I'm going to mention this here. Cockpit interaction system. This is a big one. If you used to fly 2020, you may wish to change this back to legacy. This is how the cursor interacts with a particular dial or knob. There's a new way of doing it in 2024, which for me was kind of reinventing the wheel. The way it worked in 2020 was absolutely fine, and because it was what I was accustomed to, I've changed it back to legacy, which is basically the same as in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. However, if you want to change back to how 2020 was, that's where you find it. Advanced options, that's mainly developer related stuff, legal and credits. So yeah, assistances are exactly as you would expect. Again, I've got pretty much everyone turned off except I can't be bothered dealing with gyro drift, and I don't want things like crash damage where the sim drives a truck into you and you have to reload the whole thing. So for me, I tend to get rid of this stuff just because it's not real. It's not real, and I actually just want to get from A to B without having to reload the sim because something weird happened. The vehicles moving around, for example, other aircraft, it's not particularly great in some respects. Obviously leave icing on, turn unlimited fuel off, and turbulence. I've got it as realistic. I could probably, yeah, maybe I'll put it to medium actually. Maybe that will make me happier. And then G effects. What have we got? Jet pilot, civil. That's a ridiculous thing. G effect affects everybody. It doesn't affect what type of the type of pilot you are doesn't affect the G effect. If you're pulling 4G, you're pulling 4G. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it in an Airbus or a flipping fighter pilot. Ridiculous. Yet the civil aviation pilot can still have a G suit. How does that work? That's ridiculous. Oh, I don't know. And then AI radio communications I generally have off because quite often I fly online and I don't really want that to be interfering with it. Controls is a significant one for me. The way of setting up the controls has changed compared to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and indeed many sims before that. And in my humble and brutal opinion, DCS and X-Plane do it much, much better than this. So basically what you have is you choose your device. In this case we've got the keyboard. And then you have keyboard presets. So you'll have three categories: general controls, airplane controls and specific aircraft controls. Specific aircraft controls are obvious. If you have something that is particular to the aircraft, you would be able to change it and reflect it here. Airplane controls are your normal airplane controls, and general controls are things like your views. So something that's not specifically to do with the aircraft. So things like the views or taking pictures, whatever it might be. Now for the keyboard, for me, I find that I've kept most of this fairly standardized across all the aircraft. I haven't had much need to change it. But what I have changed within this is, I'll go down to actually, not VR, not categorize, views. I've changed quite a lot in the views. So there's a lot of buttons where quick pilot, quick view right and left. That's not what I had put, but never mind. Has this reset them? I don't know. Don't know if this has reset them. No. Yes, it has. No, it hasn't. Let me just have a look at this. Has it reset them? I'll find out. I think it's reset my views. You absolute spanner of a machine. Is it cockpit or camera? Maybe it's camera. And this is one of my problems, is this this whole thing. Yeah, so it hasn't. So what I've done is I've come down and I use my numpad for cameras. So I've deleted everything that relates to the numpad existing, and then I've put in Shift and 0 sets the custom cameras, so 0 through to 9. So I can press Shift and then the number keypad number to set the camera, and then when I'm flying around I just have to press that button. That's got a conflict, so let's see what number 5 is. So you can either search by, if you know what it is, and so you can see I had to go through view and blah blah blah. There are so many permutations of what you could have, and the naming is not, it's a bit nonsensical in many respects. But the other problem I have is that if I because you can't search, you can search for that, but if I start pressing num 0, it doesn't highlight it. So if I have all of the keys up, oh God. If I have all of the keys up, let's try and click out of there. There we go. The key doesn't highlight. So if I've got, as it happens with the joystick, it'll be like 1 to 15. In fact, let's do that in a moment. We'll highlight that in a moment. But this has obviously got a conflict. So if I come up here, search by input and put number 5, what's my conflict? Center aileron rudder. Well, I don't want that. I do not want that at all. So, yeah. Oh, man. This is going to be an absolute pain. So all you do is hover over it, press delete, that's it, done. Search by input. Load custom camera, save, that's fine. Search by input. Search by input. Search by input. Search by input. Oh. Load custom camera 5. But I haven't got set custom camera 5 there, have I? So what I can do is I can go and learn to type. Save custom camera 5. It has got it there, hasn't it? So why was it not coming up with there? Let's redo it. Shift 5. Shift and num 5. Oh, it's right shift and num 5 I've got there. What I will highlight as well is if you press to do something, it will start scanning. As soon as you move your mouse away, it cancels it. So it can be really frustrating. That's weird. So if I come up here, search by input. So why is it not got the set? Yeah, if I do that, it comes up with load and save. Load and save. Load. Yet when I do custom camera, save custom camera, it's there. Load custom camera, it's there. Oh, jeez. This thing is just garbage. That. Right, anyway, that's how I've set my views up. Moving on. Your stick and your throttle and your rudder pedals. So let's see, we've got the GA piston single. What you can do is you can group things. So for example, you can set up profiles. So you'll generally start with none. What then happens is you go, you know what, I'm going to allocate something for my radio, I'm going to do it for my comms, for example, I don't know, decrease frequency. You come along, you press your button, so I don't know, 5, wrong device, we're on keypad, so what are we on? What do we say? VPC 6. It comes up and it then offers you the chance to do My New Airplanes Profile, which we're not going to do. I don't want that button to be doing that. But what that then does is you name your profile and you can come up with, for example, all aircraft generic, which is what I've got for the stick. So for my VPC stick, not a lot changes in my stick between various aircraft. So what I've got is all airplanes controls. I've got GA piston single, twin fighter jet, and that's pretty much it. Even for helicopters, it doesn't change that much. I haven't allocated anything really for helicopters. Same thing with the Thrustmaster Warthog. What happens is you do your thing. If you make any changes to these, it will then ask you to save it again. One of my big bugbears is when you go into it, so the first thing you can do is actually you can go in, you can duplicate, rename, apply to all aircraft, etc. You can make it default for that aircraft as opposed to apply for all aircraft, but there we go. One of my things that I don't particularly like, let's click out of there. One of the things I don't particularly like is that if you make a mistake, there's no undo button. It will ask you to, the only option you have is to save and go back. So there's no undo. So if you accidentally do something and you go, oh God, what did I do? For example, you've made a change and you've skipped through the airplane's profile, controls profile without realizing it. There's no undo. And I think that's a really basic error that actually, you know what, there might be a point where I've made a change and actually I don't want to save it. So kind of let me have the possibility to go back to how it was. And I've had that a couple of times where I've erroneously made something, you know, that I didn't want. And I've either not been able to find what I didn't want and therefore just had to suck it up, or I've not been able to, I've gone on and oh please Asobo, just have an undo button. Why have we not got an undo button? Right, we're in a 172, so let's just make sure that we've got a GA single prop, and we've got GA single, GA piston single. Yeah, that's fine. That'll do us completely. Been out of that. We'll see what happens with the views. We will see what happens with the views. So yeah, you can also change things like the now why is it, see, I move my stick and it doesn't actually change. Most sims, when you move the stick, it will follow where the stick position is, but it's not in this. That's a bit rubbish, isn't it? What I will do is I'll put a tiny, the smallest possible dead zone I can in for the stick, 0.05, and then 0.05. But I don't understand, every other sim, when you move the stick, it doesn't matter whether it's X-Plane, DCS, you see the movements. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely bizarre. Oh. So having looked at controls, accessibility, this is obviously in terms of, I mean, there's stuff here that will help some people. It doesn't help me. I am visually impaired, but none of this helps me. And then obviously VR. I'll be honest, I haven't tried VR at this point because I've moved house and all my stuff is in various boxes. But it's worth me having a look at that at some point, just out of basic thing like this here. What the hell? It's not. Surely it's not the most difficult thing, is it? Is it? Have I missed something? Every other menu's fine except this one. I'm trying not to be too negative. Resume. Okay. Oh, God, it's windy here. So, outside view, use your mouse button to look around, and then you can use your keys to walk around for a what I would describe as a notional walk around. I say that because you can still do the walk around. Yeah, we'll have a look at it with an airliner, but let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. And then you can do a walk around of sorts. Normally you can see dots on in terms of what you can do, but you can go... It's not letting me do it. There we go. You can check that things are there, so you should have, on the ailerons, should have one up, one down. And you can see the controls in the cabin moving as well. So left, right. Cabin controls are moving in the wrong, in the correct orientation. That's all right. But I don't. There's such a limited walk around on some of these aircraft where you can click on stuff. Get rid of those. I mean, aesthetically, these things look brilliant. The standard of aircraft that we now get in the sim, compared to what we used to get, is staggering. I mean, it's not very realistic because an average Flying Club 172 looks an absolute nail. The aircraft are that old, but this, you know, this is payware quality stuff. Let's be honest. Payware quality stuff. Really nicely modelled, and you duck as you go under, but I don't remember us ever having this quality of aircraft in a default sim before. Static works, etc. Where can I grab this thing? Now, it's got no weight to the controls, so with its straps off this should sit like that because of the weight of the controls, but can we wiggle the... yeah, it won't let us wiggle that at all. And then you can just press your button to get in. You can also press Shift C. Now that's one of the things I found, that when you change it from the legacy to the new system, you lose some of the new facilities, like being able to get in and out of the cockpit. This is a graphical glitch. Now this is updated by the looks of things compared to the other day. I actually think that we've got it slightly better. Yeah, it seems to be slightly improved. I don't know what's going on with the fencing. Yeah, the shimmer, I don't know what's going on with that, but standard 172, pretty much the same as every other sim. Does look nice. For me, there's no awe-inspiring difference compared to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. It still does have the most irritating thing for me, which is where the controls seem to just, you do steady movement with your stick and then they just lurch over. it just, yeah, it's just a personal irritation for me. But it's pretty much standard. Some nice features like the wear and tear on the key. If you open the door, then obviously it spits you back out to where you were. Unlike 2020, noises are louder and quieter when you shut the windows, etc. So that's nice compared to the original Sim. I mean, this is not far off. Well, this is the sort of standard we used to pay for payware, really, isn't it? Not too long ago. Modelling of things tends to be quite good. Looking close up, you get nice standard instrumentation. I mean, that's the sort of standard that we used to look at for payware. Let's be honest, that's not too bad at all. It's not too shabby. Not everything's as great, but certainly they've. I mean, I'm a big fan of X-Plane, but this is kind of putting X-Plane to shame with some of these graphics. I'll be honest. But then that's always been the case. P3D and FSX throughout the years have always tended to be slightly shinier and more aesthetically modelled, more pleasing aesthetically. So yeah, let's see if we can set up, or I might still have my views set up. Yes, so it is working. So next thing we're going to mention before we go any further is the tablet. I don't know why it's stuck all the way over here. It's a pain because you have to move your view to get here. But the tablet is in all of the standard Asobo aircraft. It's not in the INI builds because they have their own tablets in them. But most aircraft have some form of the tablet in them. And it's quite decent, I'll be honest. It's better than we've had in most Sims up to this point. You can either have it here or you can access it through up here. Oh, my super carrier module's obviously here as well. There we go, that one there. So you can have it pop out, which for me I find far better. Now you can go through the process of creating a flight plan, which is really good. You can then have particular flight details in relation to how you want to run that flight. You can load your baggage and your fuel into the flight plan. However, what you need to do is go, I'll show it in a second, go down here to actually load it. Then you get final reserves in terms of fuel and endurance, etc. And then finally you get to clipped charts. Clipped charts is really, really good. Come down here, you can get to your aircraft. This is where you can load your stuff. So you can put loads of stuff in. I'm not quite sure by the staggered seating. Maybe they're highlighting that's the pilot. Oh, thank God for that. They've got rid of the stupid thing where somebody used to sit there all the time and you couldn't get rid of them. Oh dear, I weigh 170 pounds. That's not great, is it? Oh, thank God for that. Having that weird, freakish looking thing next to you was horrendous. So that's better. That's better. You can also load in your cargo, your fuel, and your see what your CFG is in terms of your empty weight CFG. But yeah, so this is kind of where you set up the aircraft within here. We're not going to do anything particularly with that. Performance characteristics if you wanted to calculate them. So that's there. And you've also got your checklists for the individual aircraft. Slightly different to how Microsoft Flight Simulator did it. 2020, sorry, did it, but still pretty decent. And then aircraft information if you wanted to know about the aircraft, but this has got nothing on it to show. And then here we've got your pilot logbook. You've got your settings if you want to change stuff. I like kilograms and litres and degrees Celsius. Thank you very much. You can add favourites, so I don't know if there's going to be favourites available later on, but yeah, can I add a super carrier one? Oh, I don't know, I've got to type it. But there we go. So I assume the favourites are just what's down here. And then back to the flight planner. The flight planner is very, very good. What I will say is we'll have a look at doing the flight plan in a bit. Can we map settings, recenter on aircraft, nearest airports? Nearest airports, what do we get? No, it's come up with nothing. But But what we're going to do is just take this off, see what we think about the handling, see what it's like in terms of as the aircraft is, and just have a bit of a jolly around Innsbruck to start with, and then we'll do a couple of other flights with helicopter and something where we're going to use probably an Builders aircraft of some description, or maybe the 737, we'll see. But yeah, so make sure that my controls are set up and working, and we know that's working. Jeez, look at the sudden snap there. Okay, and you can, as I say, you can tune the control, so seems to be a lot of need to keep my toes away from the brakes on this. Right, I'm not going to go through any particular checklists, etc., but let's see what we've got here. So that can go on, that can go on, fuel pump can go on. They've changed the switches, these are quite nice. I do like these aesthetically. We'll put the beacon on, we're not going to bother with any of the, in fact we need the nav lights on as well, but I'm just conscious not wanting to run down all of the electrical wiggly amps. I've got a primer down here somewhere. Primer. If I remember rightly, is it not over here? Or are we ignition here? Make sure we're on the fuel. Can't see a primer. So long since I've flown one of these. Is that the primer? Don't think so. Right, well we'll see if we can get started with that primer then. So we'll crack the throttle. Am I missing something for the primer? I must be. Oh well, never mind. We don't need a primer. Or do we? Well, that'll be why. Didn't have the mixture. There we go. You flaming idiot. Okay. Fortunately, it's Simland, and Simland allows you to make mistakes. But there we go. So, we'll just enter that to clear the scary screen. We'll do the same here. Clear the scary screen. Let them do their own thing. And we'll set single stage of flap. Are the circuit breakers working? They are indeed. Well, that's a nice one. So that's nice. We like that. Avionics are all on. Everything's working. We're happy with that. We'll reset our view and we will trundle out towards a runway. Anyone seen a runway around here? Okay. And that's not a great rate of turn. Why is we not turning? Full right pedal. That's not a great starter for 10, is it? There's full right boot. And we're not turning. Let's have a look at this from outside, shall we? We're not going to still be able to control it, are we? Now we're dragging. Parking brakes off. Why is this thing not turning? This is most unusual. Most unusual. They're working. Don't think I can control the controls from here, can I? But they're moving fully, so I don't understand why it would... Why are we not turning? We were turning to start with, and now we're not. Is brake on or off? Brake's off. Right. I'll tell you what. I'll start from the threshold. So I'll see you in a moment. But I have no idea why that's not turning. Okay, so you're back with me, guys. As you can see, I've just restarted it. It seems to be working fine this time now. Got a bit of rumbling noise in the background, which is nice. The sounds are okay. It's not going to set the world on light because it is only a Cessna 172, but the sounds are nice. The taxiing's okay. Ground handling is much improved over, say, FSX, P3D. The ground handling bug seems to have been fully and completely killed, in my opinion. And then the aircraft's got a bit of inertia, so it's quite decent. So make sure we stick our first stage of flap down for this. Bring ourselves round. I haven't done any checks in terms of the sort of run-up checks or any of that nonsense, but that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Looks pretty good to me. What are we getting? We're getting... I wish I had the frames per second up here, but I don't. So the GPU is running 73 odd %. Has it got utilization frames per second? It hasn't got frames per second up here. That's a real shame. But as I say, I've been getting really good frames per second, but that's because I'm streaming as opposed to anything else. And then in terms of the actual CPU usage, you can see we are literally hammering. And I say hammering, we're just using all of what's available to us. Apart from the recording device I've got, which is OBS, I haven't got anything else running in the background of the sim. But let's see what she handles like in terms of flying. So, trying to keep it straight with the rudder. The rudders are a bit twitchy, and I found the trim to be a bit twitchy as well. Let's see how we do. Not too bad. I don't know what the wind is, but we're skipping around a little bit. A little bit of a jolt into the sky. Let's get the flap up and try and trim. I've always found the trim in Microsoft Flight Simulator to be a bit clunky. We're not even near the centre line of the runway. Come on, Richard. You can do better than this. But the aircraft's pretty stable. I mean, the real thing's slightly less stable than this, if honest. It does tend to move around a little bit more than this, but we're already trimmed for A speed. Don't quite know what speed it's for, but it'll kind of sort itself out. So we're longitudinally stable, which I would have expected. It's normally quite pronounced in most GA aircraft. There's not many GA aircraft that aren't stable longitudinally, and certainly in terms of rudder, it's stable in terms of the yaw stability as well. The thing that gets me is it's also remarkably stable in roll. Too much so. I would have expected some sort of attempt to recover to level flight in the aircraft. The real thing would do it. General aviation generally don't just sit there. Will tend to either roll into or out of a turn depending on how they're rigged, and sometimes they will do it differently one direction or the other, again depending on how it's rigged. But this thing will just keep going around forever and a day. Let's see if they've changed something from when I first started with it. It used to be that I'd turn in, and then as soon as I rolled out, the nose would just rocket upwards. It's not as pronounced. Let's just steady ourselves down and get a certain amount of trim and stop ourselves from pitching into the sky. We do need some throttle though, I think, don't we? That'll do that's good enough for government work, isn't it? Not really. Not really, says he. You see what I mean? The trim is, the whole thing is quite jumpy. But if we go into a 30-degree angle of bank turn, see what happens when we level. Ah, that's better. That's much better than it was 2 days ago. Much better. Yeah, it's not launching the nose skywards. That's much better. Much happier with that. I still don't think it's on a par with the handling dynamics of X-Plane. I think X-Plane is much more involving. This still feels a little bit sort of like being on a roller coaster. You know, I'm hands off. It's just doing its thing. We've got wind, we've got some turbulence, but yeah, it's not really getting that excited about stuff, is it? So yeah, it's going to do this until it runs out of fuel, isn't it, really? But there we go. Yeah, so GA wise, it's plenty of fun. It is what it is. It's not the most exciting aircraft in the world, to be fair, but it is the default one that virtually every sim seems to want to have in it. So we'll just have a bit of fun with it, take it to the ground and see what sort of fun we can have. It's coming to do a super fast landing, but it nods around a lot. It's not entirely convincing. I don't know that I've ever flown an aircraft that bounces its nose up and down as much as this thing does. We'll bring it right in and then we'll go and find another aircraft to have a play with. As an aside, the scenery looks great. We know this from 2020. The scenery looks great. The clouds look great. The lighting's good. What I would say is that compared to 2020, I don't think it's necessarily a complete whitewash. It's not as if it's completely reinvented the wheel as we did have from P3D to FSX, Flight Sim 2020. What we do have is good, but you know, it's not completely changed the world. See if we can break it. So this is where the turbulence is a little bit overexcited. I don't know any aircraft that's bounced around this much in the turbulence, but we'll see how we get on. Oh, we're going off the centre line. Come on, get back. Certainly not in yaw. That yaw is a bit excessive for me. Nice sounds. Textures on the runway are nice as well. We've got the drone cam available. So they've got new textures on the runway, new markings, etc. That snow's a bit in your face, isn't it? Whew. But yeah, I mean, aesthetically the whole thing looks really good. So, right, let's try somewhere else. We'll probably try a helicopter and see what they've done in terms of another location. So, back in a moment. Okay, so here we go from the good to the ugly, and I'm hoping there's no bad in between. And you'll see what I mean in terms of, unless we get a custom built airfield, there's lots of areas where the terrain suck. I shall show you. Let's walk away from here without getting our heads chopped off. What the heck? We've got melted buildings. We've got this monstrosity over here. More melted buildings. We've got a nice shed, which is great. There is a problem in that this heliport is hovering above a one below. Yeah, it looks, doesn't it really, more than... It looks horrendous. It looks like it's been just hit by the worst tragic weather event in the world. It's awful. I can't get back up. But yeah, I mean, this is London City heliport, and actually we need to change that weather. It looks awful, doesn't it? Let's just change the weather so we can have a look at some sightseeing. Let's do a preset, live, custom, live. Can we do preset on here? No. Custom, month, day, year, weather. live weather, clear skies, few clouds, and let's do that. That will hopefully be a bit better for us. Yeah, there we go. Right. So, I had an issue with the handling on some of the helicopters. We seem to have got somebody with us now, all of a sudden, which we didn't have before. Can I get rid of him, I wonder? I'm going to suggest I probably can't. Flight performance, centre of gravity. Hello, what's going on here then? We're all the way over here. Where's the rest of my helicopter gone? Seats. Well, that's obviously not seats, is it? Cargo. Okay. Fuel, empty. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Right, let's get rid of that. Let's get some flying done and see what we think. So, has it still got my saving settings for in here? No, it hasn't. So, let's press that button there. See if we can set up some here. Shift 5. Get out of my way. Shift 4. We're just going to set up a couple. And what it's done previously is when I've done this, shift that, it has previously chucked me into something completely else. Random. Okay. Next thing, that. Excellent. Right. So, previously what I found was when I stirred the pudding, we had an excessive amount of movement from the helicopter. That's much improved. Can't remember which way the rotor's turn in this. But I found the helicopter previously to be far too twitchy. That's much better. Much better than the initial release. That's much better. It's still too twitchy for my liking. Hey, whoa, 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 whoa. Steady on, lads. Steady on, guys. Come on. Let's get this back in. Right, let's go. Oh, God, look at the scenery. Look at that over there. That's just awful. Stuff popping in and out. It's not following the river. Bridges and stuff. Oh. And now I am not a skilled helicopter pilot. You've probably figured that out by now. But looking at the scenery is awful. Now this is London. Obviously it's a capital city. I'd kind of hoped that they would have done something about London. But this is where I'm saying unless you've got somebody actually taking the time as a developer, the system that they've got of just having the textures, draping something over it and hoping for the best clearly isn't working. You get cars going under bridges, you get stuff popping through the top layer of the mesh. It pops in at a distance. Yeah, car under the bridge there. It's just not convincing. It ruins the illusion. This bridge in the other time was, yeah, it's still all over the place. Look, oof. God, it's awful. It really isn't. Haven't seen any trees in the middle of the water yet, but they will come. Oh yes, they will. The buildings look awful. Look at the, oh, it's depressing. It's depressing because for helicopters are all about flying low. And we've got helicopters, but we haven't actually focused on making sure that what we've got is actually any good, which is depressing. It is very twitchy. It's far more twitchy than a helicopter should be. This is the modern equivalent of the Squirrel, the single-engine Squirrel. I flew a Squirrel when I was in the military. I wasn't qualified on one, but I managed to get some time with an instructor where we went and learned to fly a little bit about the Squirrel, and it was nowhere near this twitchy. Absolutely nowhere near this twitchy. This thing's bouncing around. I wonder if it's I don't know if it's the aircraft modelling, or more likely it's to do with the wind. Car going under the bridge. London Eye's turning too quickly. But this is far better than it was the other day, says he, with a proper big old wobble. Houses of Parliament. That looks better than it did the other day. Don't know if it's just me or not. Cars going under the bridges. Mushy houses. Yeah, I mean, the helicopter handling is decidedly better. Although, to be fair, it couldn't really be that much worse. But the scenery is really poor. It just, when you've got, oh, look at that ahead of us. That is awful. And look at the strange trees. Looks like broccoli. Oh dear. Now the thing is, if this is a capital city, and this is what we're getting as a capital city, you then think, well, what about elsewhere? Are we going to get the quality that we want elsewhere? You know, if your local city isn't a capital city, are you going to get anything that's decent? But the buildings are absolute garbage. And this is one of the advantages in some respects of the old system, is that because you weren't streaming it, there were lots of things where they're not loading stuff in the same as you are streaming it. They've got a nice depiction of the Shard there, so some of the key things are demonstrably better than other things. Yeah, we haven't got any trees in the water yet. There's always time. Tower Bridge. Often incorrectly referred to as London Bridge. It's not London Bridge, it's Tower Bridge. With a vivid blue line going straight through it. I don't know what that's all about. So yeah, it's improved over 2 days ago in terms of the aircraft handling. That seems to be much better, much more predictable. It's still shaking its head around a lot. As I say, I have flown a squirrel. It didn't seem to be that sensitive. For the helicopter aficionados, I don't think it's got all of the handling characteristics. Apparently, we've got land underneath the underneath Tower Bridge. Can we squeeze through that gap, do we think, or is it going to have a bit of a moment with us? Well, we won't if we're at that height. If I crash, it's my own fault. I think we're a bit too high. A bit too high. No, we've hit it. Oh, have we survived? Have we survived? Yeah, we've survived. There was an issue the other day where if you went over something, the aircraft would suddenly jump up. So let's find a building to just go over the top of. See what happens with the handling. See if I can replicate it. See if it just jumps up. Ah, it's not even twitched, has it? Not even twitched. Maybe it's just teleports, I don't know. But there we go. Right, let's leave that. That was quite a pleasant surprise compared to yesterday. Quite a pleasant surprise. Okay. Free flight. Let's see if we're going to crash again in terms of the sim. Right, let's have a look at what we're going to go to now. Airplane. I'm going to go back to an airplane now. We'll have a quick look at a twin engine piston, I think, shall we? Twin engine piston. What choices have we got that are default? So not all of these, as I say, are default. The Titan's default. We'll load in with that. That's a very nice looking aircraft. Now this is one that's Coronado, I believe. Yep, Coronado. They're a big time developer over the last decade and a half, something like that. They've done FSX, P3D aircraft, X-Plane, they've done all sorts. Their aircraft tend to be not necessarily the greatest in terms of flight modelling, but they do produce some really lovely looking aircraft, so we'll have a look at that. So we'll take that one. I'll take one of those, please. And we're going to go from, let me think, should we go from, yeah, we'll go from Courchevel. just have a bit of fun. And we'll see what the modelling around Courchevel's like. Hopefully we'll be able to get this thing off the ground. Don't need that. We are going to change the flight conditions because we don't want to fly in the dark, because that's far too scary. And we'll have a look around here, and what we will do is change the weather to live again. Weather live time. We'll change that when we're back in the sim then. In fact, what that'll do is that'll change it to live, and then we can change it. No, we'll change it when we're back in the sim. It's obviously winter season, and let's go with that. So the loading times aren't too bad. So my internet, by the way, just for a frame of reference, is 300 bananas a second, whatever it is, megabits, megabytes. I don't really know. I'm not that familiar with computery, high-tech, internet-y network stuff. Right. Have we got it set up as 2 throttles? No. So, I'll leave it as 1. No, I'll change it to 2 throttles. So we'll just set up our controls then. Settings, controls. This will be a good one for just setting up the controls. So what we're going to do is go to the throttle. We're going to duplicate that. We're going to call it a new profile. So twin piston. Set as default for that aircraft Oakley, and then we're going to go down to power management, propeller. We're going to delete that because we're not going to be able to have a propeller axis, and we're going to come down and go throttle, because I've only got 2 levers, so I'm going to delete that. Throttle 1 axis. Now I don't know what the difference between that one and the other one is, but axis, throttle 1 axis, we'll try that, see what we get. And throttle 2 axis. You see what I mean in terms of not having cancel. I've got no choice now but to go back. So if I've then gone onto a completely different page, I don't know, I've gone onto the Warbird, I'm going, oh, hang on a minute, what did I do? And they don't. Yeah, just have a cancel button. And you can't even get out without saving. It doesn't make any sense. Right, let's have a look. There we go. Let's make sure the props are up full. Mixture's full. Oh, that's a bit excitable, isn't it? Nice sounds. Do like the sounds. So shift 5, shift 4. Oh, this is where it does the silly shift 6. Yeah, it does the silly camera thing. I've had this before where it's an absolute pig. So yeah, look at that. It seems to just lurch them forwards for no obvious reason, and I do not know why. It does that sometimes when you're changing between aircraft, and it's the most frustrating thing. But there we go. Right, what flaps have we got? Where's the flaps lever on this thing? That's way over here. I think we're going to definitely need to put some down, aren't we? And all we're going to do is take the brake off, hold it on the hold it on the foot brakes. Power up fully, let it get all the way up, and then go. And then hold the nose down, and hopefully we'll be able to get enough speed to get off. Whoa, that was a bit excitable, wasn't it? Right, we've got some airspeed. Flaps are coming up. Handles really nicely. I've got to be honest, I enjoy flying the Coronado aircraft. The fidelity of their flight modelling, I'm not entirely convinced about it sometimes. But this is an aircraft that fascinates me because where I did a lot of my flying out of East Mids, there was a company called RVL Aviation that you do all sorts of stuff, and they flew Cessnas. I think they were 404s. I'm not entirely sure, but I always thought that'd be a cool job doing surveying and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, very stable. Let's see if we can trim it. It trims better than the default Asobo stuff. I'll give them that credit. It's really actually quite nice. We'll bring the throttles back a bit, stop shouting at everything, and then we'll just bring these back a little bit. Nice warbling sound. Probably should put prop sync on, but I'm not going to bother. But yeah, this is kind of a run on rails. It's not really doing anything. Having said that, I've not flown the real thing. The real thing might have a rudder interconnect that makes it nice and stable. I don't know, but it's really nice. So this is an example of a twin. Very nicely done. What we're going to do is we're going to do the following and see what it's like in terms of single engine handling. So let's put that up, get them fully up, bring it round to the right a little bit so we don't run into the wall. Bring that off. Get rid of the airspeed. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing to fear from with the horns. It's just saying that we haven't got our undercarriage down, which is fine because we've got nowhere to land. Blah, blah. Let's get the speed right down. I assume somewhere in here there's a button to press the to clear the warning horn. Now I don't know which is the critical engine in this aircraft. I don't know which way the props turn. But let's try and stop ourselves and slow ourselves down a bit, shall we? Doesn't seem very excited about slowing down, does it? It's really not excited about slowing down. So we're below blue line speed. What I'm looking for is the little red line that's here. That's the minimum control in the airspeed, MCA. VMCA, I should say. So that's the speed. Stall warning. It's still not trying to drop out of the sky, and we're nowhere near our red line. Full right rudder. About 5 degrees of into dead engine. That should keep our heading. It's not keeping our heading. Oh, there we go. Didn't quite have full pedal in. It's not bad. It's not bad. I'm not entirely convinced about the aerodynamics. The thing is, it's a simulator and it can't replicate that sensation of your leg shaking from having to put so much force through a rudder pedal for a twin that's engine out. It can't replicate that. And that's the sort of thing that you've got to bear in mind when you're sat at a desk, a computer desk with 100 quid controls. You aren't going to simulate everything. You know, the instrument rating is a hell of a mind-bending test to go through. You're not going to simulate that in a Cessna 404 here. You know, yeah. But it's fun. It's fun. Looks great. The aircraft look great. The terrain around us looks great. But it's worth bearing in mind that when we went to that noise, they've not got rid of that from Microsoft Flight Simulator. I think they've over-egged that pudding, certainly. But you know, I mean, you wouldn't chuck the real thing around like this. You certainly wouldn't do that. I have no idea where Courchevel is from here. But there we go. So we've had a go at that. It's nice, it's very stable, the scenery looks great. Graphics wise and sound wise, great. Job done. Right. End flight. End flight. What we're going to do now is have a look at the 737, because that came up for a lot of criticism and I still don't think it's necessarily fixed. Where are we? Boeing 737 MAX. So let's have a look at the 737 then. We're going to depart from is it on here? No, we're going to depart from EGKK, which is Gatwick. We're going to go from there is no such runway as 26 right at Gatwick, so we're going to go from 08 right, I think it is. Let me have a look at SimBrief. Let me have a look. Yeah, 08 right. We're going to Frankfurt Hahn, and that's all we're going to do in here. Flight conditions will change so that we're daytime, custom daytime, so that we can see the world, because it's a pretty little world out there. We'll leave it as winter, and we'll just start with that, see what we get. And as I say, the 737 came under quite a lot of criticism in the early days. It was not a great part of the sim, and I guess for every good part of the sim there's a bad part of the sim. But Gatwick was also bad because Gatwick didn't load in with scenery.
Golf Charlie Quebec 828 ready for departure to the east at runway 8R.
But Gatwick has buildings, yay! Or does it? It's loading stuff in as we're closing on it. We're hunting you down. I'm assuming these are remote stands and wouldn't have stuff. Yeah, they look like remote stands to me. But it does seem to have some buildings. We're picking up the buildings as we're going in. Yeah, it's not bad. Got the fuel farm. But at least we've got buildings now. It was just freakishly awkward to load in and find that you had loaded in where there was an air stair, or a jetway, but no actual terminal. But that seems to be rectified now, so that's good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, I bet I haven't got any views set up in this side, have I? Oh no, it's loaded in the BBJ. That's not what I wanted. Never mind, we'll just load it regardless. So, oh, it's done the views again. Shift 5. Shift 4. Yeah, it's not having it. Oh. This... Calm. Never mind. Right. Visually it's quite a good representation of a 737 MAX. I've never been in one, so I don't know. This is the problem when your views don't have set up views. Okay, so we're going to do our route. We're going from Gatwick, runway 08 right. Change the procedure. We want the odd V2 Zulu, is it? Yeah, the odd V2 Zulu. Change procedure. It should come up with our routing on here, which it has. Good. Good, good, good. And this is quite a useful system. I'll show you another bit of it in a moment, but what we want to do now is go down to Frankfurt Hahn. What's our arrival there? It says we're on the Roku 3 Kilo for runway 03. So let's change this to runway 03. Change procedure, we're going to do an ILS RNAV 3, ILS 3 transition. What transitions have we got? It doesn't really matter because we're not going to be doing it. Have we got an actual arrival? Yeah, rocket 3 Kilo. Pop that in there. It's come up with lots of stuff. Ooh, bit excitable there. Come up with lots of stuff here. That looks promising for an arrival, or an approach, arrival I should say, to an ILS for 03. Right, change procedure, pop that procedure in by pressing change procedure. Hopefully that is all good. So, back, then what we can do is find a route between those positions. That'll do. There we go. So we've got a route, we've got a departure and arrival and a route. How cool is that? You can set up your flight rules, so we would want IFR for example, registration and so on and so forth. You can set up your payload here should you wish, and then you've got the navigation log there should you wish, and then finally you can go to your clipped charts. Don't know why there's any clipped charts yet, but save charts, we haven't got any save charts. So there we go, and send to avionics. I don't know if that's sent anything to the avionics. I very much doubt it, but we never know. We live in hope. But we've got the route there. So what flight level are we? 350. You can change flight level and feet here. So we're going to go 350. Happy days. And that should be us good to go. Don't want to do that. So it's got all our waypoints in, it's got everything good to go. So get out of that. That should come up with some charts, but I don't know why, but it hasn't done so yet. Let's come over here and have a look down here. Execute, takeoff speeds delivered, clear, deleted, sorry. What's it got in here in terms of our legs? Oh, that's nice. It has delivered it. That's very nice indeed. Previous, let's just clear the discontinuity. Invalid leg selection, clear. Oh, well, it's not going to let us do that, but what we... it's Boeing, isn't it? It's probably like that. Yeah, there we go. Execute. Departure, it's got that. Index, arrival. Yeah, that's pretty cool, to be honest. That's pretty cool. Where's our perf in this thing? Here we go. 5 degrees flaps. Everything's on there. Let's just confirm our speeds. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the biggest thing it came up with, I don't know how, I don't operate a 737, I never have. The niceties of going through the fine details, because it's not study level, the niceties of going through the fine details are not something that I would care to look at. But let's have a look at, in terms of whether we are ready to go, do we think? We should have auto brake on, which we do. Auto arm the throttle. What did we say our V speeds were? Have we done the V speeds? I don't think we have we? So come down here. Let's just stick some stuff in. That'll do. Fuel, plenty. seats, stuff. So that will do. Loading aircraft. The loading of the aircraft was successful. Back environment. You can calculate your speeds, etc. from here. Checklist should you wish your aircraft information. Flight planner. Now it should come up with a series of maps down here. Map settings, view profile, flight information. Profile's obviously the vertical profile that's not active at the minute. I don't know why, but it should come up with a list of charts here. Is it in the settings? I wonder. Tablet size, blah 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 blah. No, that's weird. I was all excited about that because that's one of the better things about it. Eclipse charts. Wonder why it's not come up with any charts then. How weird. Never mind. Let's get this thing into the air and see what we think. But I think from a sim perspective, for an average simmer, as long as it does vaguely what a 737 is supposed to be, it's not necessarily a bad thing for a default aircraft. I mean, aesthetically it looks nice. The lighting looks nice. I know there's been a lot of discussion online about the engines being from the NG but not from a Max. I really don't know enough about that to be able to comment on that, but to an uninitiated user of it, it looks pretty good, to be honest. Can we not go through there? Do we have to open the door? What? Okay. That's not what I was expecting from going into the door to go through to the cabin. Okay. That's slightly unusual. Just slightly unusual, just putting that out there. We've got a HUD. Whoop whoop, fighter pilot styly. So yeah, let's just get ourselves airborne. Auto throttle is on. We're going to come down a bit in terms of our IAS. We'll just pick a number. We'll just do something like 140. That'll probably be fine. I just wanted to get us in the air. VNAV, LNAV. Now I have noticed something with this. They're probably going to still be doing it. But if you change between two modes, it seems to just dim and then brighten. Let me see. Heading select. Oh, it's better. It's better than it was. Oh, that's alright. That's alright. Things seem to be gradually improving. They seem to be getting to grips with it. Not quite sure why this lighting down here is so dark. Have we got some controls for this somewhere? No. Don't know. Never mind. Right, let's get ourselves into the air. Let's make sure we've got the right settings for the throttles. 1, 2. Flaps are set to 5. Ground handling with the nose wheel seems fine. And away we go. It's nice having the head-up display, I'll be honest. It's quite a cool invention. Concentrate on the runway, Ricardo. Than anything I'd have thought. We are off the ground. Pop the gear up. Trim, 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 trim. Really, that's a hell of a trim. I'm not quite sure where the LNAV wants us to go. I'll tell you what, should we try it? LNAV, VNAV themselves. What's it going to do with that then? Oh, there we go. It's arrived. It's come to join us. Is it an accurate representation of a Boeing 737? I haven't flown one. I don't know. Aesthetically, it looks nice. Is it 100% accurate? Again, I don't know. And this is the thing: is there's a difference between a default aircraft and one that fundamentally is part of the sim. We've got so many aircraft in this sim that we are truly blessed compared to how we were years ago. Let me see if I can just pop outside. It's going to be loud. That logo reminds me of like the John Player Special logo from years ago. Sounds are good. Looks alright. Is it 100% authentic? I don't know. So, let's get rid of that and get back to the main menu so we can do some sort of conclusion. I don't feel I'm qualified enough on a 737 to sit there and go through the handling accuracies and deficiencies, likewise an Airbus. I don't feel I'm qualified to do that, but certainly from a Sims perspective I can have a pretty good stab at whether I think something's a decent part of the sim or not. Now, one of the things that's noticeable is how much they have improved during the course of the last week or so. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's been changed. They are clearly working hard, and I think that's more power to them for that. But what we need to do is come up with some sort of a conclusion for what we've had a look at. As I say, it's the biggest change in how a sim operates that we've had in a while for this type of sim. So the sort of big players. So I'm not on about the what is it? The Aero whatever, Aero FS. I'm not on about, you know, all of the other sims around the fringe. I'm talking about the core, and we've only really got two core sims if we're brutally honest about it. We've got X-Plane and Microsoft Flight Simulator. We've gone from 20 to 24. Now I'll be honest, there's a couple of things I haven't really spoken much about. One is the graphics in terms of the aesthetics, and one is the music. And that's because for me there is not a seismic shift. We haven't had that generational change from 2020 to 2024 that we did, say, from having P3D into 2020. Yes, there's improvements, and when you see all the videos that they show in terms of their sort of aesthetics, when they do their shiny sunshine, etc., it's there. There's lots of nice visuals. Yes, you can't dispute that. But actually, if you sat me in one of the sims and then the other and put me in the same scenario with the same weather, I would be hard pushed to tell the difference. You'd get there in the end, I think, but it's not quite that outstanding. Oh my god, have you seen that? That looks awesome. That's so cool. We saw that with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, but I haven't seen the same level of jump to 2024. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the sounds haven't had the same impact either. Again, I think they're better. I do think they're better. But again, it's nothing that I would go, you must buy this sim because of these sounds. You've got to get it. So that's a couple of things I'm going to make as observations. You'll notice that I didn't really refer to that throughout the video, because for me it's not really, you know, that startling a difference. It's nice, yes, if you look for it, it's there, but if you don't look for it, you don't really notice that it's improved that much, and that's the key thing there. So let's go through it. In terms of how it works, the fact that you can't play it offline is going to be a pain for some people. The fact that you need a good internet connection is going to be a pain for some people. However, the fact that you potentially can run it on lower spec hardware and Xbox may well be a benefit for other people. And so it's all swings and roundabouts. So it's worth having a look at your internet connection and the specs of your PC, and going online. Go online to forums that relate to the Xbox, the PC, and find out what other people's experiences are. Don't find out what their experiences were from a week ago. Find out what their experiences are now, because a week ago this sim isn't the same as it is now. Simply, for example, Gatwick didn't exist 3 days ago. It wasn't there. You had jetways and nothing else. So things are changing, and that wasn't a streaming problem. That was something that even from day one, it's not been there. Gatwick wasn't there at all up until 2 days ago, and so there are changes happening. There are things being worked upon. One of the things I'd say is that 2020, when it came out, it wasn't the greatest. We didn't have the choice of aircraft we have now. We didn't have the quality of aircraft we have now. The fact that developers like Ini Builds and Coronado are involved in the default aircraft is exceptionally good news. One of the things for me that stands out is the need for some of the terrain to be handcrafted, more than they have within the sim at the moment. And that's down to terrain developers to come in and look at that and see whether their products can transfer across. As you saw, Burning Blue Designs, for example, they've been able, because they do small GA airports, they've been able to look at getting a lot of their stuff done quite quickly. Other developers may be quite quick as well. I don't know. It's one of those things where we have to kind of go with whatever the developers do. The thing is, though, compared to 2020, we're starting from a better position, because from P3D or FSX to 2020 was such an enormous jump in terms of the quality of the aesthetics, the use of Bing for the mapping, the aircraft. It was such a huge jump. But some of what's there can be transferred over more readily compared to that change between FSX and 2020. So for me, the future is looking promising in terms of aircraft and scenery, because I think we're going to see that quite quickly. And in fact, one of my favourite aircraft ever, the Ini Builds Airbus A300, they've just done their 2024 version for that. I've downloaded it. I'm looking at having a go at it because that is such a good aircraft. But as I say, there's some good developers brought stuff in from their work in terms of the aircraft. We'll just have a scroll through some of those as we do that, actually. Cannot exit aircraft. I'm not exiting aircraft. I'm in the menu. So ignore Black Square because that's... so who's this? Blue Mesh. Never heard of Blue Mesh, but obviously they're a third party. That's Coronado. This is going to be Coronado as well, is it? Cavalis, yeah, Coronado. Just Microsoft. Cub Crafters are Asobo, Microsoft. Yeah, so a lot of these are just default Asobo. 80 Simulations / Microsoft. Never heard of them. It's a fun looking beast, isn't it? But yeah, so as I say, there's the element of we've got a completely different structure for the sim. We've got a lot of aircraft by default. Now the pricing is something where it's really down to the individual. You know, you're paying 30 quid extra for 10 aircraft, that's £3 an aircraft. But when you see that 10 aircraft, they're not always 10 completely different aircraft. The Cessna 152 is the classic example. You pay extra money, you get this extra Cessna 152, but it's an Aerobat. It's largely the same aircraft. I've flown both. There's not a massive amount of difference in terms of handling. I don't think there is. I can't remember there being a notable difference where you go, oh, that's different. But it does take quite some guts to go out to a 152 and start doing loops in the Aerobat. When you're used to flying a non-Aerobat, it's a bit of a, ooh, hello, this is a bit cheeky. So, yeah, just be mindful that when you go up the pricing tiers, it is for me the diminishing returns. You're not necessarily getting £30 worth of what you want. You might be looking at, I'm only really interested in 1 or 2 aircraft. Is it really worth that £30 to go up that next level? And if you're a Game Pass user, that I can see at the moment, there's no way of stepping up from the standard without buying the package. Now, one of the things I'd like to see is whether they go to the stage that they had previously where they went and said, right, this is the package, but you've got upgrade options, they cost X, Y and Z. That would be nice if they did. Likewise, there's certain aircraft where I would be interested in it if they sold that aircraft, or if you had access to upgrade to that aircraft in its own right. So the H225, for example, for me would be one that I would be willing to look at paying a little bit, a couple of quid or whatever, however much it was. So that may be something they look at, and it may be something that comes into when they're looking at their what is it, the, can't remember what it was now, the rental. So it may be something that's the rental, I don't know. We shall have to see what happens with that. In terms of the scenery, I find the scenery to be mixed. There's areas where it's really good. There's areas where it struggles still with streaming. And then there's areas where it's like, really, seriously, a capital city that looks like it's just been hit by a nuclear bomb and it's melted. What is going on there? And so, particularly for those in helicopters, I think if you're near an area that's been actually worked on, so that it's a decent area for working with a helicopter, the low-level flying is quite decent. But as you saw when we went along the Thames, and you can see that, you know, London's got the London heli routes that fly up and down the Thames. The scenery just destroys it for you. So we get such a switch of scenery that it's a bit inconsistent, and it's a bit, you know, I can't say to somebody, go out and buy this sim, it's epic, if they're going to fly it somewhere and go, actually, you know what, it's really awful. I wanted to fly around my house and it's awful. What have you done to me there? So, yeah, there's bits because of the streaming that go on with that. But generally speaking, the terrain is okay, but you do need a decent internet connection. That, for me, is a bit of an issue. As I say, the aircraft, you've got a wide selection of aircraft. I've managed to get some payware from 2020 and also some payware from 2024 loaded in, which I'm really interested about. But some of the UI is ridiculous, like having no category separation for all of the fixed wing. It just does not make any sense. The key binding setup is not intuitive. It does not make any sense. It's going to be one of those things that over a period of time, yes, you're going to get used to it, yes, you're going to become more familiar with it, but you know, the A310 is a nice one as well for a default aircraft. It's nowhere near as detailed as their payware stuff, but it is a nice aircraft. I'll grant them that. The A320 is quite nice as well. The 330 is very nice. So some nice stuff in here. The A400 is very nice. The Pitts is fun to play around in. Ignore the black square. The 737 seems marginally improved, but it's not an aircraft that I'm that familiar with. The GA is fun, but it runs a little bit like it's on rails. The same could be said about the 172 and the 404. There seems to be no want in either of them to level their wings once they're in a turn. There's no positive stability in roll, which is a shame. But as I say, there's so many aircraft here. There's some real fun ones as well. The Vision Jet's quite good fun. So, yeah, there is a lot here. I haven't gone through every single aircraft in depth, but I think that we've had a fair representation of what's going on there. So, Fly Simware is one that I've brought in. I'm looking forward to trying that in the sim. I don't know if it's actually declared as compatible or not at the minute, but we'll see. We'll see sometime. So yeah, the aircraft, the handling is very dependent on the developer of the actual add-on. I think that's an important thing to say. Carenado have never been thought of as really high fidelity for the handling of their aircraft. Neither have default Cessna 172s, etc. in sims. The difference being 172 in X-Plane for me is a very good representation, and most aircraft handling wise are very much better in X-Plane, and not exclusively the case. So A2A, when they did their Comanche in Microsoft Flight Simulator FSX, that was pretty smoking, to be honest, and a lot of their stuff was really good because they added in extra handling characteristics and dynamics that weren't part of the sim. So yeah, so the aircraft fleet is decent, and so really we come down to, if you like, sort of 4 or 5 big bullet points. The UI is pretty, but not as intuitive as 2020 for me. The pricing is the same as 2020 approximately, but it's one of those things in terms of just be mindful of what you're looking at. The aircraft choice and selection is great, but the handling is what we would expect for some in default aircraft. In others, there's bits that are below par. I'm looking at U737. There's others where it's exceptional. I'm looking at A400. And then scenery is very dependent on where you are. If it's something that's been crafted, obviously it's much better, and we have seen improvements. And then finally, the big thing is the internet. If you've got good internet, the sim is much better than if you've got poor internet, and the hardware that you've got in your computer becomes less relevant than maybe the internet connection that you've got. So that's it, guys. That's kind of my bullet point. I'm enjoying it. Have I moved fully across from 2020 to it? No, I haven't. That's because some of my fun aircraft and some of my best airports are still in 2020 that I want to fly into. Having said that, having now been able to load in the Phoenix and the A300, I shall be spending more time in this sim than I have been previously over the last few days. So hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.